Hello and welcome to SSDD Studio. Once a year, a bunch of teenagers will help us make complex challenges understandable. The project called Wisdome Sustainability Lab lets teenagers practice co-creation and visualizing the unseen. It's run by the European Spallation Source in Lund in collaboration with Wisdome, the visualization center at Malmö Museums.
This seminar shares insights and learnings on working in a lab setting, collaborating with bright brains of the future. On stage for Wisdome Sustainability Lab with ESS are Eva Davidsson, Joanna Lewis, Sara Lindström, Carl Ludvig Svensson och Erik Rupe. Welcome.
Perfect. Here we are. All right. So, Sarah.
Yes.
Can you please tell us a little bit about Wisdome Sustainability Lab?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Sara Lindström, and I'm from Malmö Museer. I'm also here with my colleague, Erik Rupe. And we work in the team of Wisdome Sustainability Lab. And I'm the coordinator, and I'm going to tell you a bit about Wisdome Sustainability Lab. But I can't just talk about the lab. I need to tell you a bit to give you some context about the Wisdome Sweden, or the whole Wisdome project. So it all started in 2017 when Malmö Museum received a donation from Knut and Alice Wallenberg's Foundation for visualization technology. And the initiative is nation spread and goes by the name Wisdome Sweden. It includes 4 other science centers in Sweden. It's in Gothenburg, Stockholm, Norrköping, and Umeå. And to establish and assure the operation of the visualization center at Malmö Museum, we started a collaboration project called Wisdome Innovation. And it's a regional initiative founded by the European Regional Development Fund, the City of Malmö, Lund University, Altitude Meetings, and many other partners around the region, and academia and businesses. So we are in the process of creating an experience arena with a high-tech 360 degrees dome theater and digital lab to develop an educational environment and a place for interactions. So we see this as a meeting place for creativity and innovations that shall inspire and create interest for science. And we have this amazing place built at the Technical and Maritime Museum. But one thing that's really important to tell you, it's not just all about the technical stuff. I mean, it's super cool. It's an awesome dome. So the technical stuff is really cool. But for us, it's more about telling the story. It's about learning. And then we have this amazing tool called visualization. So with visualization, you can explain like the smallest of things and the biggest in the universe. And that's the power of visualizations. So we see this as an arena for stakeholders and people of Malmö to meet and work together. And hopefully the project will contribute to solve our common challenges. But now I will talk a bit more about the activity that's the Wisdome Sustainability Lab. And it's a test bed for collaboration. And the lab creates a unique opportunity for dialogue between different actors. And the activity also provide valuable knowledge on how the visualization center can become a relevant, sustainable, and an inviting arena for challenge-driven innovations. So what we saw at the Malmö Museer was that the age group of 16 to 19 years old was a really hard age group to reach out to. they were the age group that didn't visit us that much as the other ones. So we saw this as a really good opportunity to invite these young people to this activity and also provide them a summer job for 4 weeks. And then we also wanted to have the main focus on their own perspective on sustainable urban development. That was really important. And then we thought, what happened if we combine these young people with different actors like Ludde and ESS that you will hear more about later? What will happen? Hopefully some interesting things. And the lab has looked different every year. So this is the 4th year we're going into. And to give you just an example, in 2020, the young people, the youth, they were doing everything in all the steps in the activity, doing the research, everything. Of course, with help from the coordinators and from the business community actors that were consults and were therefore being pros at design processing and visualization technology. But the kids were doing everything from developing a challenge based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to doing the research, to coming up with a solution, to learning a visual tool, and then create the visualization, and then presenting it. And all this in 4 weeks. And we thought of it, and maybe this is unreasonable demands for 4 weeks for this youth. So we tried to learn what happened, and then we learned from it, and we came up with this idea of something we call challenge owners. And a challenge owner is an organization or somebody else that comes in with a real need, a real case from their own organization. So in 2021 we tried this, and ESS was one of the challenge owners. And we saw that this increased confidence in the whole project, in everything, because it was more real. Someone is coming in and say, "Hey, we need your help. We need your opinion. We need your perspective on this, and we will also keep it afterwards, and we will do something. It's important for them." So the whole project got more serious, and it was really nice to see. So we continue to develop the activity, and this year we have taken it a step further. But Erik will tell you more about that later. So thank you.
Okay, I'm Eva Davidsson, and I'm from Malmö University, and I work as a researcher there in science education. And I have been involved in Wisdome Sustainability Lab last year as and following the process from a research perspective. And the main focus for this följeforskning, as it's in Swedish, is how do co-creation processes affect learning, and how can the learning lab as an environment support co-creative processes. So what is this co-creation? How can we define it? Yeah, it's a process that are based on a challenge, as Sara said, identified by an organization, and which then involves different stakeholders to create possible solutions together. Next, please. And Wisdome Sustainability Lab involves a learning lab. And what is specific about that? I've listed 11 characteristics, but it's not a complete list, or nor does it needs to every feature to be in place for calling a learning lab. But it involves creating an innovation culture, take authentic practices, reach out to heterogeneous audience, and so on. So there are several features for this learning lab that could be listed. Next, please. So we've been saying culture of innovation several times now. So what is a culture of innovation? Well, you see the features I've listed here: creation, new ideas, fantasy, reflections, shared knowledge, and risk-taking. and that could be described as a culture of innovation. But why do we need to define it in that way? Well, some groups work well from the start, but through discussing the prerequisites from the start for a culture of innovation, together we can agree on what it is. It's more likely that group members feel safe to share crazy ideas or to try things outside the box. Joe.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Jo Lewis. I work at the European Spallation Source, or ESS. Some of you might know it. It's a large research infrastructure being built outside Lund at the moment. And what's a research infrastructure? It's when you build a very large-scale project so that researchers from all over the world can all use it together. So really ESS is a consortium of more than 100 different organizations working together to build something. It happens to be located here in Sweden. It could have been in a number of different countries, and we're really excited it is here in Sweden, in Lund. And we're still in this process of building it at the moment. So we have more than 500 people working for ESS from over 50 different nationalities. So it's a really exciting and international place to work, but not forgetting all of these other organizations from all different countries who are all building different components, designing and then building different components of ESS, which gradually, one by one, are being installed here in Skåne. So it's quite a complex organization. And why are we there? We're there to do research, which in itself can be quite complex. But I've got another 2.5 minutes, I think, to tell you a bit about it, so that should be enough. The main thing to know about ESS is we're there to create knowledge. We're there to enable researchers to come together in order to find out exciting new things that we don't already know. And knowledge in this context is often in the currency of papers, scientific papers, which might get published. So I suppose that's what we're hoping to produce. What's interesting about it is that those researchers could be from many different fields. So they might be physicists, but they most often won't be. They'll often work in maybe chemistry. They might work in the life sciences, perhaps designing and developing new medicines. They can also work in areas of engineering, and some of the work at ESS will be able to look at engineering components when they're being constructed and see if they're being done in the most efficient way or the safest way. What happens if you change what material you want to make something from to make it cheaper or make it more sustainable? How does that affect how efficient it is in the long term? I'll give a few more examples as we go through. We can move on. So, a little bit more detail. How do we do this? So I think of ESS as a giant microscope, more or less. It's there to look at things that are much too small to see with your eyes. And instead of using normal light as a regular tabletop microscope uses, that simply can't see things small enough because the light isn't small enough. So instead of using visible light, we use neutrons to look inside. Now, you might or might not remember what neutrons are, but they're our main currency at ESS. They're the little thing inside an atom. So I've got on one side, that side, quite a simple atom, which has got a little bit of white and a little bit of red. So 2 protons, 2 neutrons. So these are the neutrons. They're inside, the middle, the center, the nucleus of an atom. And most of ESS, the machine, is there to get these neutrons out, and to get them moving, and to get them in a useful place so that we can use them as a microscope would to actually hit our sample that we want to look at, whether that's a bit of an engineering wing, or if it's an archaeological sample, or a new exciting polymer. So we need neutrons. So how do we get them? We don't use this little helium because that's only got 2 neutrons in. We use something called tungsten, which is a nice Swedish word meaning heavy stone, but which you Swedes call wolfram. So this is an atom which happens to have loads and loads and loads of neutrons inside. And so this is the best material to use. So we have a giant wheel which is made of tungsten, and when we hit it with high energy, it releases those neutrons, and we can use them then to do all sorts of different areas of research. So the reason that we use neutrons is partly they're the right size, as I said, to see very tiny things. But they're a little bit like, in many ways what we're doing is a bit like X-rays. And in fact, you may have heard of MAX4, which is an X-ray source just next door. So if X-rays are good at looking at your bone, the heavy bit inside your arm, neutrons are good instead of looking at the light elements, so not the iron and heavy elements, but actually much lighter elements like hydrogen. So this image here is of one of those Italian coffee makers you put on top of the hob to make your coffee. They're made of aluminium, and if you looked at it with X-rays, you'd only see the metal shape. But by looking at it with neutrons, as this video was using, you see straight through the metal, and instead you can see the water molecules, the hydrogen inside the water molecules, as they bubble and get hot and boil away to make your beautiful coffee. So this is just an example of how neutrons can show things that you can't otherwise see. So this is why we want these neutrons, which is what we're mostly using. Can we have the next slide, Linda? So another example might be archaeological samples, and this image here is actually of a dinosaur egg that was found, and without breaking it open, researchers were able to use neutrons to actually see inside the egg and see the fetus of the dinosaur inside there. And we've drawn a little picture over the top in case you couldn't immediately interpret it. But it means that we can look at ancient and very precious samples without actually damaging them. So it's got a lot of fields it'll have an awful lot of impact in many different fields of research. So why, what's our next slide? There we go. Okay, a little bit about how it works. I like to talk most about what it's for, but there is a bit about how it works, and we talked to the young people during this project about how it works too. The main part of the story is that we have in Lund, we've built a giant particle accelerator. It's about 600 meters long, and we use that to accelerate protons into this wheel of tungsten that I described earlier in order to get the neutrons out. So this is a little bit what ESS looks like. Some of it's underground, so it doesn't look quite like that from the outside. That's probably all I need to say about that for now. Right. So why were we interested in a project like Wisdome Sustainability Lab? So my role at ESS is Public Engagement Officer, and that's about talking to the public and also schools and young people about what we're doing. I really feel very passionately that that this is an exciting project for Sweden that happens to be based here. In fact, our data management centre is also based in Copenhagen. So Sweden and Denmark are joint hosts of ESS. And we are very keen that people know it's there and get basically as excited as I am about it by the time we actually are open. But part of that is trying, at this stage, before it's all finished, trying to understand what might interest people about ESS. So asking more questions. We're more in listening mode at the moment. What do people want to know? And how can we use that to help us do any of the information that we're doing over the next few years? And I was particularly keen to hear the voices of young people. What do they think ESS is, if they've heard of it? And what would they want to know more about? And if they were given the opportunity to find out that little bit more about it, how would they describe it in their words? How would they talk about ESS to their friends and their peers? And how can we use that knowledge to create information that's actually of use and interest to the young people of the region? So that's kind of what interested me, and it's part of this process we're going through where we're just trying to bring people along a journey that some people are super interested in stuff like particle accelerators. Turns out some people aren't that interested, and so you need to use different types of communication and tools. You have to understand where people are at the beginning, and then give them opportunities to ask questions and see if they want to know more. And over time, if you do it well and you're able to be open about it, I think people can come along a journey where they could be more and more engaged in what we're doing and ultimately tell other people, hopefully positive things about what it is that we're doing. And so I guess I was trying to find a way that we could work with young people to so that they can be the ones helping us tell this story in the next few years. What have we got next? Is this the next slide? I can't read it anymore. Oh, good. Is this still me? Yeah, it is. Okay. So once we started on this project, so we were involved in that first year, the 2020 year that Sarah mentioned there, where we were just a kind of spark of interest. They came up with the challenges, but just before they did, ESS was used as a story to give them something to get their teeth into early on, to think about how would you approach visualizing something quite complex. Turned out 2 days was quite hard to get your head around what ESS is. So for this next year, we were delighted to be involved actually as one of these challenge owners. But actually, we came in with the same brief for that 2 days as we did for the 4 weeks, which was essentially what's interesting about ESS, if anything, but what is the thing that interests you about ESS? And then how would you describe that, or what tools could we use to describe that to your peers or to your friends? And the intention was to use the young people's words and their voices to help us to write a brief when commissioning external things to happen. In this case, we were thinking about an animation, but really any communication, to be able to use that for the brief. Has that covered all those things? Excellent. Yeah. Right, I'll hand it to you.
Okay. My name is Carl Ludwig, and I'm a designer. So I was engaged in this project together with my colleague Emma Kristersson, who is unfortunately not here today. But we were given this assignment to lead these young kids into unpicking the ESS over 1 month of time. So the question that we asked ourselves is how do you drive a team of four youngsters towards engagement and learning in the ESS, right? So the complexity of the science sort of creates this barrier to understand its use and application, and also sort of what it is, what is the bigger system of science, right? But Emma is quite good at working with people, and she's trained in the field of cognitive neuroscience and social psychology. So she structured the process in the following way. So the first thing we were trying to do was to probe ESS with the youth's unbiased minds. So asking questions like, what is the ESS? Why does it exist? And so on. We tried to filter that knowledge that we gained from probing, and we were trying to find individual interests, and I had this really good word that we were talking about the other day that Emma. Yeah, she said we were exactly. We were trying to find wonder nuggets.
Wonder nuggets.
So the individual wonder nuggets to engage in ESS for these young people, right? Yeah, I should point in that direction. Okay, so the process design was sort of had two different characters. So the first one was kind of straightforward in such a way that we are letting the young people probe their individual networks through sort of serving. Asking questions and try to find quantitative information on how they understand the ESS. But we also worked with methods such as cultural probing, where we asked them to have a look at sort of culture science related projects. For instance, this music videos, science versus music. Okay, it doesn't play. It doesn't matter really. But so they are working with. Yeah, now. Okay, so they're working with with sort of trying to highlight the musical qualities through using physical phenomena, and that was quite interesting to let them have a look at projects like this and sort of describe what is happening, and then they could sort of realize that, okay, I can describe this up to this point. What happens after this, right? Now I need to sort of gain additional knowledge, right? So it's a combination method, right? Okay, now, so after receiving all this information, how do you start visualizing, right? And this is sort of tricky when trying to engage people that are not sort of regularly work through imagery and form, right? But we had this idea, or sort of a takeoff in this Baoba Kiki effect. I don't know if you stumbled across it, but it's to illustrate how abstract form, where we have sort of common perceptions around abstract form, right? So looking at these two sculptures or representations, you can ask, right? So who is Baoba and who is Kiki, right? And most likely 80% of you in this room will agree on who is who, right? So you can be kind of self-assured that you're right, right? And then we can leave it at that, right? And so we try to highlight our common perceptions, and then we ask ourselves, with this as a basis, so how to illustrate life, right? The word life. Now it gets a little bit more complicated, because if you, for instance, talk to let's say a dancer, right? There is a good chance that they will connect the word life or lively to one of these two forms, right? And if you ask someone that is sort of into more maybe biology, right? That person will probably pick the other one, right? So here it gets complicated. So we have a common perception, but there is a limit to it, right? And when we are starting to visualize abstract things, you know, our perception might move in two different directions. Okay, but throughout this, we practiced a lot with clay, right? To be sort of fast in trying to describe these things to one another. Right. Now, so I was talking about probing these kids for wonder nuggets, right? And it turned out that they were very interested in visualizing instruments and applications, right? And this is maybe not that surprising, because it renders somehow concrete, right? So the ESS is important because we can, in the future, make really good life science research that will lead to better drug delivery and advances within that field, right? But so this process was guided by the kids' interest, right? But here we see a mood board, a storyboard that we delivered in the end to ESS. And what's quite interesting with this one is that it differs slightly from the other ones that we did in such a way that it ends here on your right-hand side with a illustration of Janus particles, which are these two-sided particles that can have two-sided properties, right? And to sort of come to that conclusion, you have to be sort of engaged in your reading on about science and the ESS, right? So we can see that here is sort of a glimpse of a sort of advanced learning through this visualization. Yes, Joe. Do you want to finish here? Finish off this slide.
On this, that this is the output, if you like, of this project. Something I perhaps didn't really talk about was the depth that we decided to be involved. So when we were just the 2 days, we were there every day for the 2 days. But with the 4 weeks, we just did touchstone places. So we came really just once a week, mostly. Did a little bit more at the beginning where some people gave talks, gave a bit more information, but we tried to give them space, so we stepped back a bit. And what we'd asked for, if you like, in return was storyboards or a brief that, as I said, we would then use to help us when commissioning work in the future. And so this is one of the examples of the storyboard. And it's great to have it as a visualization because it means it's not just what they were trying to tell us, but also clues as to how we ought to be visualizing it, the sort of images that are appealing to that age. So it was really two-dimensional, I think, in a good way about showing different ways of talking about ESS. They had a particular story they thought we should focus on, but also gave us hints and clues, and they actually wrote a kind of look and feel review as well of how we ought to be trying to visualize ESS if we want to make it appealing to this audience, which was great. And so what we've done as the next step is that we did take those inputs and helped that we used those ideas when writing the brief of commissioning external animators to start helping us to translate what we're doing to various different audiences. So it was really great to have that to use as an output of last summer's work, which we're very grateful that they put all that effort and time into.
Okay, so we return to the learning processes and the co-creation process and what happened. Well, initially, participants were experienced really difficulty in understanding the challenge, and I made some excerpts here just showing what the young people were saying during the talk by the end of this session. I asked any challenge you faced, what has been difficult, and examples. And from the group of ESS, they said a definite challenge was that we did not know exactly what to do. What we got from ESS was very unclear, and then we solved it through with our thoughts and stuff. But we could decide for ourselves how we could reach young people. Next, please. I've also made a slide about the two key founding sessions that we had. One in week 2 and one in week 3 about to sum up what how far the process have come. And the black colored by the end of the table there is from the ESS group. At the first key findings, there were very uncertainties about what to do and how to get along with it. So the 3 points they made: next step, how to move on, schedule to keep energy to work, understanding the assignments, the difficulty of understanding what to do. And with key findings 2, they were on track and saying, sent out survey, what's left is to keep up working. So this is not perhaps breaking news, is you learn as the process goes on, but being aware of what's happening in such a process could help moving forward, and being explicit in the start of such a process, you could also help the group to move forward. This is how it is done when you do a challenge like this. Next, please.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to say that what was great for us is we were actually in attendance at those key finding sessions too, so we could be there and hear what their thinking was, so we could adapt the project as we needed to based on those two.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and they were also involved learning from the organization part, and I cut in this from the ESS comment here. It's very important that organizations like ESS listen to the voices of the young people. It's still early in the process. It's a good opportunity to learn about what people understand and know about ESS and how we can tell the story and share ideas, especially with young people. So it's important to also consider that learning happens for all the stakeholders in this process, and it's visualized here. Yeah, thanks.
So, and a little bit of kind of conclusions, if you like, from ESS. As I said, we have used those results, and in fact our head of communications came along when the young people presented their final project, which was great. He was really pleased to be there, but that was helpful to actually start embedding that into our decision-making process. And I think sort of my reflections on the project was that it was important to give those young people the time to reflect on what they were doing. So it was good that we were going in regularly, but it was also good to be able to step away so that they had time to reflect on what they'd learnt. And often, a bit like this kind of session, you might give them a lot of information and ask for questions straight away, but actually they needed time to reflect, and then the good questions would come later, not straight away. And I also would say that I suppose part of what we were trying to do here was actually to see if we can use young people as a way of, if you like, amplifying the message. So there was these two moments in the project where we tried to do that. The first came from the young people, where they, as Linda was saying, they surveyed their friends and their peers to ask them get a collective view of what bits of ESS were interesting. But in doing so, they had to explain some of what it is in their own words. So that was the first step. But then the final product, if you like, this idea of having a storyboard or a brief means that they've actually inputted into that process, which then is a broader way to broadcast, if you like, that message to a larger number of people. So by giving any particular group, in this case it was young people, but it could be parents, it could be teachers, it could be any sort of slightly invested or interested members of the public. If you give them interesting bit of information in a context that they are allowed to ask questions and feel involved, and give them the time to reflect on that, then they are in a great position to be a multiplier of that message themselves. And that's really the only way that people will hear about ESS. We could write press releases and things, but who people read them if they're already interested. But actually, if people start talking about it by word of mouth, that is when it's really actually a story which resonates in the region. And so it's through programs a bit like this, I think, where you have an opportunity to have a particular audience who can multiply that message or amplify it, that enables that to happen. And we don't, as an organisation, we don't always get to control that, and I think we have to be very aware of it, that we can seek opportunities to work with those people at the start, but actually the message will go on its own, and it's up to us to sit back and accept what is the story that's being told, and to keep listening to how that story evolves over time.
Yeah, I wanted to end with some concluding thoughts here on visualization, and right. So what we see is sort of that science tend to render kind of complex. It's hard to engage with these science concepts and to try to sort of replicate them in a visible way. However, we see that in some cases it actually works very well. For instance, here you have a short loop of the shopper function in the ESS instruments, and I think that. It looks very much like how the shopper looks in applied at the ESS, but this image gives some more information. So the shopper, to make it very short, is has this function of sort of a switch for the neutron beam, right? And I think that an interesting moment was when we were looking at other visualizations of neutron instruments, and the guys sitting there in the room, they were looking, and then all of a sudden they said that, oh no, here comes the chopper, following the neutron beam. So they were like, oh, stop, warning, chopper. Right, and this sort of visualization tells that story, which is nice. So they have added their sort of thoughts and feeling to this, right? So a few ending ideas, right? So one thing that is hard is to sort of keep up the pace and the speed of the visualizations, right? It takes time, and at a project like this, you need to move on quite fast, right? So I have a suggestion or an idea that it would be interesting to sort of incorporate these neural networks and AI-generated imagery into something like this project, because then you can write down a couple of words. Okay, I would like to see a neutron doing this, right? And then you can use that as a foundation for your illustration or visualization, right? And then you can add on to this, and you can also make comparison by this auto-generated image and what is available online, sort of science communication material, right? So this could be interesting. Another idea is to sort of try to move closer when it comes to this sort of in visualizing science. It would be interesting to sort of engage sort of ASMR knowledge and community. Some of you might have seen these videos on Instagram or whatever, where you have this sort of calming, soothing video loops, right? And I think that there is something here, especially when for instance, talking about maths, that we know that can awake sort of an anxiety and stuff for students. So this could be an interesting way of working, right?
Okay, so I return to my two questions that I posted at the start. How do co-creation processes affect learning? Well, it involves learning for all parts. All stakeholders learn and share their knowledge within this project. And it takes time and it takes effort. And I often hear that it's very difficult to learn about science, and especially physics. That's way out difficult. But we can show in this project that making it accessible, it really involves and engage young people in physics and in abstract physics and in absolutely new research and top research physics. So you can engage young people in these kinds of issues and questions, and they are really engaged and want to learn more about it. And how can a learning lab support co-creation processes? Yeah, a prerequisite to create value for our participants. It's important. The young people really got into this. They, of course, got a summer job, but they were really engaged in the topic as well. And the organizations were really engaged from their perspective to get their viewpoints. So it's important to create value for all participants and stakeholders that are engaged. And it's important also to create this culture of innovation and consider the features of learning labs when starting may support learning. Erik.
Yes, okay. Yeah. I'm Erik Rope. I work in the museum as well with Sara and these guys sometimes. And it's been wonderful to work with Wisdome. We've been working this is the 4th summer. I think we do the lab again. And we really look forward to it. It's going to be very exciting. We were thinking of after each time we have done some changes, and for this summer we think that, as you heard some of the speakers say, they have a limited amount of time, and that we want them to get more to concentrate on their speciality, that the youth give their opinion of the challenge that they get from the challenge owner. And so how will we do this year? We think we are planning that they are going to investigate first some of from the challenge they get, and then after that they will give an order to produce partner. And so they will then order a visualization from them. So they will not be the ones that actually visualize. They will mostly work with give their opinion on the challenge. So then we think this will increase the communication value for the challenge owner, and that the product in the end will become more professional. And we will also focus even more on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So a week ago we published a contest for produced partners. So that's where we want all you to come in and compete. And you will find this competition on malmo.se/Wisdome Malmö in one word. So with this we hope for a fantastic summer. We'll start the 20th of June.
Yeah.
And
we're excited.
We're excited, and we want, of course, this project to carry on, and in the future as a coming event every summer.
Yeah, work with these cool people.
These cool people that we
and
have
others,
enjoyed, and others are always welcome. So we want you to apply. And now we open up for questions. Yeah.
No, there's no time for questions.
Thank you for listening.
There's no time for questions. Yes.
If you have any.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have time for questions? Can we ask?
We have a.
We are off already.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. Yeah.
Thank you.